Right, today we go on to a very interesting study, chapter 14 of ST40A, ST40A.14. This is on page 174. Gnanatitya Sutta 1. There are three of these suttas, same name. Gnanatitya means various sectarians, various groups of non-Buddhists. No? They all deal with the 10 questions, the 10 speculations, in other words. Now this series of suttas, they're from the Udana. Udana is one of those collection of short suttas. Some of them are very inspiring. Many of them contain very old teachings. So it is this sutta, Gnanatitya Sutta 1, the reference is U 6.4. Udana, chapter 6, sutta number 4. And this sutta centers around the parable of the blind man and the elephant. The translation starts on page 184. Now this sutta and the parable brings some very happy memories to me personally. When we first came to Singapore, we moved to Singapore to live here, but over some 12 years ago. I remember the first talk I was invited to was in one of those big prestigious schools in Singapore, and it was on Friendship Day. And there's this big gathering of some 800 students from various schools, from the Japanese school and some international school, and of course the students of this very prestigious school. And it is a kind of interreligious forum actually. So we have the Muslims, the Hindus, and we have a Christian representative, but he couldn't find his way there. He lost his way, so he didn't come. And then there is the Buddhists, so I was invited to represent the Buddhists. So we were talking about what friendship means and the significance of religion and so on. And then there was question time, and it was the most interesting part actually, because you have 600 intelligent young people, secondary school students. So the kind of questions they asked are of course very interesting. And there was around the time of the bombing of the Bamiyan Buddha in Afghanistan. So understandably the students were asking, if religion talks about peace, why do they bomb the Buddha image in Afghanistan? So understandably, we got the Muslim answer first. He was very apologetic, and he says that Islam is a religion of peace and so on and so forth, and he felt very bad about this and so on and so forth. He was very conciliatory. And the Hindus, of course, also speak of peace and tolerance, non-violence, and so on. Then he came to the Buddhist turn, my turn to speak. So it's not an easy subject to address. We're talking about very important, very ancient Buddha image has been destroyed. This Buddha image at one time was covered in kind of a bright, shining, golden kind of veneer, and with a jewel in his forehead, and beautiful. So this image can be seen from far away as the merchants travel along the Silk Road, so they can see they're coming to a safe place. And all these things have been removed, stolen, and so on. And now they've even destroyed this, bombed this image. They tried it for many decades. They failed. They couldn't get enough powerful ammunition, but finally they succeeded. So this was my answer. I said, well, we Buddhists, we don't blame anybody. Right? The first answer, we don't blame anybody. Everything happens because of conditions. So obviously these people, they're not happy about something. So they could have bombed the image anytime, but finally they did it. And what was interesting is when I did some research later, I found that the reason was very compelling actually. Someone, uh, the people, art lovers in the West, they've been coming to Afghanistan saying they want to restore this image. And it, of course, a lot of money will be spent there, millions of dollars. But the Taliban said, look, we have a lot of poor people, right, in our country, why don't you help them? Why do you want to restore this old image which doesn't belong to our religion? So they were not happy, right, at the fact that these people would not help them, to help their poor, rather would do something to this old image which is meaningless to them. So in the end they got so upset, they decided to destroy the image. That's the reason, the causes and conditions. So in a sense they did it out of desperation. Maybe anger, maybe hatred, right? But definitely out of desperation. But then, more important than that, I told the crowd, I said, look, as Buddhists, we understand the nature of images. They're all impermanent. Sooner or later, these images will be destroyed. If we don't, someone doesn't destroy them, these images themselves will decay, fall apart. So the images are symbols of impermanence. So the Taliban, those bombers, are giving us a very somber reminder that everything changes, breaks down. Nothing lasts forever. So we have no hatred towards them, we have no anger towards them. Maybe a bit of sadness in the sense that it's such a beautiful ancient artifact. If they had restored it, maybe they could attract more tourists and the country would have been rich. But now, of course, all this religious tourism aspect are growing in the country. So things are changing a bit. So that's the story. But the interesting part is this. At one point, the Muslim speaker quoted a very interesting story. He says, we all have different views. And we all are looking at different parts of the truth. And he quoted the story of the blind man and the elephant. He says, well, once there was this king and he got this elephant and grew a blind man to kind of touch the elephant and then to tell what they felt. So each of them their own view about the elephant, and they just started quarreling. So he says we should not quarrel over all these differences. So I was kind of very happy with that statement because I said, wow, the Buddhist teaching have pervaded all other religions, because from what I know, the parable of the blind man and the elephant is found in almost all other major world religions, in Judaism, in Christianity, and all the different forms of Christianity. Probably they do not know it comes from the Buddhist text on Udana from India. But whatever it is, it has become such a famous teaching that people don't really bother where it comes from. So today we're going to look at this most beautiful parable, the parable of the blind man and the elephant, from the Locus Classicus, from the sutta that it comes from. So we're going to start from the beginning, the sutta. And this is on page 104. The first discourse on the various sectarians, EU 6.4. Thus have I heard that one time the Blessed One was staying in Anathapindika's park in Jeta's grove near Savatthi. Now at that time, there were a number of recluses, Brahmins and sectarian wanderers of various outlook, various opinions, in other words, various views, living around Savatthi, holding various views of various persuasions, of various inclinations or preferences, relying for their support by way of these various views. Now this last line is very interesting. Relying for their support by way of these various views. So in a sense, these various religious people, or not so religious people in the form of religious appearance, they were trying to be relevant to society. So they must hold some kind of view. And if they hold some kind of view, there'll be those who have the same views, and these lay people will support them. right? So it's a kind of a career religion, if you like. So relying for their support by way of these various views, right? So you can see here, from the start here, already the narrator is telling us the purpose of religion, the false purpose and true purpose, the good purpose and the bad purpose. The wrong purpose of religion is to have views and prove we are right, others are wrong, and cause strife and trouble. That's what religion has been doing for the last many centuries. On the other hand, to be a Buddhist is to understand ourselves and our views, why we hold such views, and then slowly, mindfully, patiently we let go of these views bit by bit, to have no views, to be filled with desire instead of a view. Many of our views are compelled or motivated by desire, by lust. To have ill will and hatred is to have views, because many of our views are motivated by anger, by ill will. All our views are motivated by delusion and by fear. So we have to get rid of these three roots and fear. We have to understand the nature of our minds. This is what Buddhist training is about. Clear the mind of ideas. So here the sutta goes on and says, in the next section, there were some recluses and Brahmins who held this doctrine, this view, the world is eternal, only this is true, all else is false. So they stick to one view, they say the world is eternal. Then another group says, oh, the world is not eternal, it's the only truth, all else is wrong. Another group says the world is finite. Another group says the world is infinite. So here you have four cosmological views about the world. The first two is the universe or the world in terms of time, right? The world is eternal, the world is not eternal. Or the universe is eternal or not eternal. And then the second one is in terms of space, right? The universe is finite, that means it has an ending. And the other one is infinite. Then there is the next four is the views on the next two, rather, is view on the soul. So one group says the soul and the body are identical, the same. These are the materialists. So they believe that if the body dies, the soul also dies. Then another group says, oh no, the body and soul are different, right? So these are the eternalists. So they say that, well, body may die, but the soul is eternal. So all these are wrong views. Then there's a set of four more wrong views dealing with the nature of a person or a saint after death. The Tathagata or the saint exists after death. Only this is true, all else is false. Another group say the Tathagata does not exist after death, right? The saint does not exist after death. Another one says, oh, we both exist and does not exist. The fourth group says, neither exists nor not exists. All wrong views. So these are the 10. So they will kind of argue and so on. And the people kind of are fascinated by all these views, and they go to the various teachers or proponents that they admire. And that's how the religious people get their support. So this is quite familiar. Even today you find people give talks. Monks, nuns, lay people give talks. And some groups like certain people, certain speakers, and those speakers get support. They might even become rich, build retreat centers, build temples and so on. But the reality of it all is, all of us, we have to make an effort to study the suttas, to listen to ourselves, to know the Dharma, to clear our minds away. It's not who's right, who's wrong. The idea is to understand how we think, why we think this way. And when we meditate, that's what happens. When we meditate, we clear our minds of all these thoughts. Then we are really at peace with ourselves. So the sutta continues, section 4. Now a number of monks, having dressed themselves and taking bowl and robe early in the forenoon, early in the morning, entered Savatthi for alms food. So they were walking around collecting alms food. Then they notice all this, right? All these different kinds of people having all these different views, 10 kinds of wrong views. And then all the 10 views are repeated. And then they go back and tell the Buddha about this. Then the Buddha declares as well, this in section 8, the wanderers of other sects, bhikshus are blind, eyeless, lacking vision, in other words. They know neither the beneficial nor the unbeneficial, neither the truth nor the untruth. Not knowing what is beneficial, or not knowing the meaning, not knowing what is unbeneficial, that not knowing the false meaning, not knowing what is true, not knowing what is false. They dwell quarreling, arguing, given to disputing, attacking one another with verbal knives or the weapon of words, saying this is the truth, or this is the Dharma, this is not the truth, this is the truth, this is not the truth, and so on. Yeah? So the Buddha is saying, well, these people are quarreling because they don't really know what's going on. Then the Buddha tells the story of the blind man and the elephant. It's a story of the past, a kind of Jataka parable. It begins with section 10. Once upon a time, bhikshus, there was a certain king or Raja in this very Savatthi. This king is not named, you can just say one of those ancient kings. Then bhikshus, the king summoned a certain man, saying, "Come now, my good man, assemble together all those in Savatthi who have been born blind, or who have been blind from birth." Right? So, well, I suppose at that time the kingdom was quite peaceful and prosperous, so the king was didn't have to go to war, so was quite very bored. So he thought, why don't we entertain ourselves? So he decided to summon all the blind men, those who are born blind, not just recently blind, but blind from birth. And there's a very good reason for that. We will find out in a while. So the servant did just that. Section 12. Then he approached the king and said, "Your Majesty, all those in Savatthi who are blind from birth have been assembled." Then the king says, "I say, show an elephant to the blind man then." And then the servant says, "Okay, yes, Your Majesty." Okay, this is the interesting part, okay? Some of the blind were shown the elephant's head and told, "You who are born blind, this is an elephant." So it's just shown a part and it says, "This is an elephant." Because they're not wrong. They hold the ear saying, "This is an elephant." And they hold a tusk, says. Another one holds a tusk and told, "This is an elephant." Another one, the servant puts the hands of this person on the elephant's body and said, "This is the elephant." Another one touches the foot and said, "This is the elephant." Anyone holds a tie and is told, "This is the elephant." Another one holds the tail and is told, "This is the elephant." Another one is told to touch the tuft of the tail and say, "This is an elephant." So you got head, ear, tusk, trunk, body, foot, thigh, tail tuft. You can make this into a round song actually. So they have seen the elephant with the comers. No? So the king said, "Have they seen the elephant?" So the king is kind of being a bit sarcastic. And then the servant says, "Yes, they have seen the elephant." Then bhikshus, the king approached the blind man from birth and said, "Oh, you who are blind from birth, have you seen the elephant?" Okay, here is a very funny way of talking. I've heard sometimes a blind person even making fun of themselves. They say, "Oh yes, I can see you. How are you?" and something like that. Then the blind man says, "Yes, Your Majesty, we have seen the elephant." "Speak then, you who are born blind. What is the elephant like?" Okay, so that's the question. What is the elephant like? And then here comes the interesting part. Bhikshus, those blind men from birth who were shown the elephant's head, said thus, the elephant, Your Majesty, is like a water pot. Right? The elephant says big, like a water pot. Those days, we call it in Malay, we say tempayan. It's big water pot. Okay? Pictures those men blind from birth who were shown the elephant's ear said thus, the elephant, Your Majesty, is like a winnowing tray, big tray for putting, we pound the paddy husk and then you just kind of keep throwing the seeds into the air, and on a windy day the wind will blow away the broken husk and the rice grain will fall back into the winnowing basket. That's called winnowing. Then the blind man was shown the elephant tusk. Who felt the elephant tusk said, oh, the elephant is like a wooden stake, like a wooden spear. Then the blind man was shown the elephant's trunk. Says it's like a plow beam, like the heavy part of a plow. And the one who touched the elephant's body said, oh, it's like a storehouse, like a granary, a place for keeping grain, small storage room. So we more or less know those days the storage room is kind of round, like a silo, in the US. Then the one who touched the elephant's foot said, oh, it's a mortar. This elephant is like a mortar. Something for little gadget for pounding. Those days the mortar can be quite big. You imagine it's like the size of an elephant's foot, right? And then it can be a piece of log or stone, and there's a cavity dug in the center so that it's round like a tree trunk, and the elephant's foot also is like that. And the one who touched the elephant's thigh and said, wow, it's like a pillar. And the one who held the elephant's tail and said, it's like a pestle. It's like the piece of stone or wood for pounding in a mortar. And the one who touched the elephant's tail tuft, the end of the tail, says, oh, this elephant is like a broom, or like a besom, like a kind of a broom. So thus bhikshus, they struck one another with their fists, saying, the elephant is like this, the elephant is not like that, and so on. And on account of these bhikshus, the king was amused, and of course the court also was amused. Of course, this is a story, right? Of course, the blind men of today surely will protest. They say, we know what an elephant is. Although we might be born from blind, we still know what an elephant is. Of course, in such stories, we have to suspend our judgment. Here, the story is saying, imagine someone who's never seen something like this. Many of us have never seen certain animals. And when we go to the zoo, we're surprised that there are such animals, right? Or sometimes we might see them on TV or in some magazine or some encyclopedia. So it's like we have never really seen this new thing. We all have our opinions about it, and we think that our answer is the only right one. And sometimes you might see this even in families. A certain member of the family might say, oh, this is the thing, and I'm the only, my opinion is the right one. So this goes on very commonly in our daily life. And those who know, of course, will be amused. Right? They might laugh, or they might just remain silent. And then comes the lesson. Section 30. So the Buddha says, in the very same way, bhikshus, the wanderer of other sects, blind, eyeless, lacking vision, strike one another with their fists. They know not what is beneficial, they do not know the meaning, they do not know what is unbeneficial or what is the false meaning. They do not know the difference between true and false, right and wrong. They know not what is the truth or the Dharma. They know not what is false or not Dharma. So not knowing all these things, they dwell quarreling, arguing, stuck in disputing, attacking one another with weapons of words, saying this is the truth, this is not the truth, and so on. So finally, the Buddha closes the instruction by giving these udahanas. The udana always ends with a verse. Ime su kira sajjanti eke samana brahmana vigaiha nang vivadanti jana ekang gadasino. Attached to these hearsays, some recluses and Brahmins quarrel divisively over them. These people who see only one side of things. So there you are. We tend to look at only one side of something and everything. That's it. And this is what religion is about. You find today so many religions in the world. And the success of religion today is not measured anymore by how true it is. The success of religion today is measured by how much money it has. And they use this money to have buildings, print books, dress nicely, have very good sound systems, things like that. So people are impressed. They say, oh, look at this wonderful place we're going to, with all these beautiful buildings, sound system, people who are nicely dressed. They must be right? So this idea of equating religion with worldly progress. A lot of people have this idea nowadays, even in Buddhism. We measure success with worldly progress, with things, with members, with the way we dress, with our jobs, our titles, with success basically. So, understandably, we do not tolerate wrong views from other people or criticism from other people. Now what's interesting is this. Is this story still relevant today, let's say in the Buddhist environment? Because today you find many Buddhists, or you might even say the Buddhist leaders, the mainstream Buddhists, they try to be very friendly people, and they never attack anyone else. I mean, they talk about respect for other religions, other views. So you find no one really talks anything bad about other people. In fact, it's bad to talk bad about other people. So have they become wise because of this sutta? Well, I don't know really, but one thing I can say, I don't think it is because they're really tolerant that they don't talk bad about other people. It's because we tend to treat religion as a business. And if it is not good to talk bad in a business, then you won't attract customers. So if you think like that, you can understand why many of these organized religion appear to be very nice people. Now I'm not saying something bad here because it is really happening. It's something sad and painful. In other words, if we do not have any problems and we are rich and happy, healthy, and we go to one of these religious centers, people welcome us. They want us because we are a contributing member. But suppose if you are really in trouble, you're poor or you are sick or you're lonely and you have no place to stay, I don't think it's easy to get a place of refuge. Many decades ago, I remember in Malaysia, there's a story, right? A real life story. A certain person, I'm not sure whether it's a Buddhist or not, decides to test this monk in this temple. Let me not say where it is. The story is important, doesn't matter where it is or who is involved. There is this foreign monk, very well-known monk, staying in this temple. And so this person, he's kind of a little, what should I say, curious and mischievous also, I would say. He wanted to find out if the Buddhists were really compassionate. So he took the trouble to dress himself, pretending to be a beggar, looking poor, a vagrant. So he goes to the temple and says, "Can you please help me? I need help," and so on and so forth. Now, to cut a long story short, well, he went to see the monk, and he was chased out by the monk from the temple. And he made a big deal of it. He says, "Look, these Buddhists, they don't really help people. When I went there as a vagrant, as a beggar, they chased me out of the temple." Okay, this is a very real lesson for us. In a sense, I would say, we need to learn from all these things. In a way, we have to thank this person for bringing this issue, although of course he has done some bad karma. Both sides have done bad karma, in a way. But the lesson is real, I mean, do we really help people who are in trouble? We talk about compassion, but do we really show compassion where compassion is needed? Do we know what is compassion? If you ask many of these people, I don't think you can really tell you much about compassion except quote something they've heard somewhere, maybe not even from the suttas. Compassion is being kind to others even when they do not need it or when they don't deserve it. Kindness to others even when they do not deserve it. That is compassion. So the question now is, are we willing and able to help others in the name of religion? Or are we just talking? Are we just getting together and to show that we are wealthy, we have a certain status in society, we are rich, we are famous, and that's good enough, and then we go home after that. And we listen to speakers who are well-known, well-educated, well-titled, important VIPs, and we say, that's it, that's Buddhism. Right? So are we not like those blind men and the elephant too? We think that is all there is to Buddhism. We too have become blind. So, in other words, the problem has become more complicated now, more sophisticated, more refined. It's even more difficult to see the problem now. That is why we need to look at the sutta again and again at different times, different ages. It still applies. And maybe some people, when they hear this kind of talk, they might not be happy. But that's the whole point. It proves that there's something wrong there. So people like you must kind of tell yourself, we don't want this to happen. We want the real Dharma from the Buddha. And how do we get it? And we work ourselves in that direction towards the true Dharma, towards the Sutta. And if we do understand the spirit of the Dharma, the first thing is we should understand what compassion is. And when we are members in a Buddhist center, Buddhist temple, and so on, we have to always remind ourselves, whenever people come, they have problems and issues, they need someone to talk to. And we should not measure them by the clothes they wear, and how heavy their pockets is, or by their looks and by their degrees and titles. We should talk to them as if their life matters, our life matters. And if we can do that, and be kind to them, and to have a group of people to support them, to be friendly with them, and then to invite them to be a part of our community, that'd be most wonderful. Otherwise, we are just a blind community of Buddhists, coming together every Sunday or once a year for a Sunday, and that's all about what we do. It's a very sad, cyclic life, isn't it? So to be a Buddhist is to be very happy, to be joyful. And to be joyful means to practice loving kindness. And when you have loving kindness, then you're more likely to show compassion. You find you're more empowered to do the precepts when you're happy. When you're happy, you find you want to help other people. It doesn't matter what opinion people have. We just respect them, and we feel that everyone is entitled to their opinion. But you find today the Buddhists are among the most intolerant people in terms of religion. I mean, yeah, we may talk that we respect other people's views, but if you are noticed to speak something which is different, you'll be quietly sidelined, blackballed, they say. So everything is done nicely, politely. So you can see, in other words, it's a bit more complicated today, more sophisticated way of pushing dissidence and difference of opinion. But in the Buddha's time, the Buddha will say, okay, talk to me, let's discuss. And it's really wonderful because it's a learning process. So here is where we want our children and members to be intelligent people. So this is where we should invite this kind of discussion, openness, and then find out why people think that way, and explain the nature of views, explain the meaning of renunciation. Renunciation means also letting go of views, because views are all provisional. All views are provisional. As long as we are not awakened, whatever we understand of Buddhism is just provisional. It's a step in the run. Whatever kinds of Buddhism you follow, whether it is Theravada, dedication of merit, or some Tibetan practice, or some Japanese religion, and so on and so forth. All these are beginning steps we are taking. But if you are stuck with it, then obviously it either has become just a way of life, a career, a means of supporting yourself, like a business, like a job. But that's not what Buddhism is. Buddhism is a way of freeing ourselves from suffering. Buddhism is to take that step ahead, away from ourselves, to let go of the self. So this Nanatitya Sutta 1 reminds us we must be courageous to take that step away from ourself. This self is not just our body, a wrong view. This self can also be misunderstood as the religion that we uphold, the ideas that we champion. Or that we can say, in this moment in my life, I understand this to be true. But I am open to suggestion. So as we do that, we find Buddhism becomes more and more interesting. Even as I study the suttas for the last 40 over years, translating them, I find there's so many new things to learn. And I find sometimes, often enough, I have to change my opinion, and new understanding arise as I do this. And it's really fun when we understand that. It's a learning process. Life is a learning process. Suffering is about learning. We suffer because we have not learned not to suffer. So suffering is telling us there's something missing there in your life, in our lives. So when we examine this process and conditions that bring suffering, we begin to see what really is wrong inside us. And we are the best person to know about ourselves. And to love someone is also to learn. Right? This is something we really have to learn in an urbanized, crowded society like Singapore. To love someone is to learn. We don't just, for example, marry someone and then that's it, you're going to live happy ever after. There's no happily ever after. You've got to be happy here and now. And we can only do that by understanding that to love is to learn. To love is to be curious about someone. It's to find out more and more about this person. How does this person behave? What are this person's strengths? What are this person's weaknesses? And how do I respond to this person on all these accounts? To love is to learn. And if you love the Dharma, you have to learn the Dharma. You cannot say, oh, suttas are too difficult, or we're not interested in the suttas. I mean, the sutta is the lifeblood of Buddhism. If you do not study the suttas, then you get second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand knowledge of someone else. And if someone else who has been talking about all these things, they are growing and changing and becoming wiser, but we are stuck with the past of this person. So sooner or later we must directly ourselves, each of us, go to the sutta. And when we study the suttas, then we feel the joy of it. Then it helps us in our meditation. Then we are at peace with ourselves. Then we are no more blind. We are no more like the blind man and the elephant in the Nanatitya Sutta. So, that is our lesson for today. Let us now conclude with a short reflection. As long as suttas are available to us, we have a chance to know the Dharma as the Buddha taught it. We have to make every effort to, if we can, to learn some Pali. If not, to read the different translations that are available, and to make an effort to reflect on these teachings, and then do our meditations, and then reflect on the teachings again like that, so that we begin to understand all these teachings better and better. And Buddhism is about changing ourselves. Buddhism is not about knowing doctrines and dogmas. It's not even not about knowing suttas. It is about learning so that we free ourselves from wrong views. We cultivate right views, and using the right view, we go on to free our minds from views. Then we are at peace. Reflecting in this way, we create many wonderful good karma. With the power of such karma, may in this life itself we be at peace with ourselves. May we attain spiritual liberation, at least stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace, to let us send out our loving kindness to all our teachers. May they be well and happy. Let us send our loving kindness to all our loved ones and friends. May they be well and happy. And even to those at whom the Dharma have not touched, that they may open their hearts and minds and be truly happy and be free by the Dharma. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.